Here's what's happened since the 70s. In 1970, there was approximately 10 megachurches in the United States. That's defined as 2,000 attenders per week or more. Today, there's over 1,500. Now, this graph is a little deceptive because what it doesn't show you is that over the same period of time, an average of 50 smaller churches have shut their doors every week in the United States. The overall size of the church in North America has not grown over the last 40 years. In fact, as a percentage of the population, it's actually shrunk. What we have seen is not the growth of the church. What we have seen is the consolidation of the church. It's the Walmart effect. Smaller churches being consolidated into larger mega churches. Here's the question I want to ask this morning. Will this trend continue? Will we continue to see larger and larger and larger churches the way we see larger and larger and larger cruise ships? Does the church as destination model, which was basically invented by the baby boomer generation, does it still have cachet for Gen X, my generation, and for millennials, those behind me? And if not, why not? And what's happening next? Do we need, once again, to rethink our models and assumptions about the way the church works in order to be effective in our missional context? I believe we do. The church as destination model worked with boomers for a very important reason. And that is, baby boomers love institutions. I know it may not sound like it because this is the generation that grew up in the 60s and they were all rebelling against the man and smoking anything that grew. But the reality is, statistically, baby boomers love institutions. When a baby boomer sees a big organization, a big company, a big nonprofit, a big church, what the baby boomer mind tends to think is if it's big, it must be legitimate because everyone seems to like it. There's a very important graph I want to show you that came from the Gallup organization. In 1973, they found that 68% of Americans said that they had a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in the institutional church. In fact, the church in the 1970s ranked as the most trusted institution in America. Today, it's at 44%. You notice the big drop in about 2001 to 2003. How do we explain that? Well, that was the years that the millennial generation became adults, and they began to be incorporated into the survey. So if you cross out or take away all the baby boomers from this graph, it would actually be much, much lower than 44%. Millennials do not trust the institutional church. And so when the boomers looked at big mega churches, they thought, wow, isn't this great? Look how wonderful it is. My generation looks at big mega churches and says, I'm not sure I want to give myself to that. It's dehumanizing, it's impersonal, it's inauthentic, and there must be some shenanigans going on. My generation, when they think about making an impact in the world, doesn't think, how do I link myself to a big organization? They think, how do I go do it myself? Now, why is all this relevant? It's relevant because these values of anti-institutionalism and entrepreneurship also transfers into their spirituality. They are not likely to commit themselves to a large institution for their faith. Instead, as George Barna articulated in a book almost a decade old now called Revolution, we're seeing the first church of the individual emerge in the United States. You know, Tim Keller, he's got that great sermon podcast thing going on. I'm going to get my sermons from him. And this church over here has got a great support group for the thing I'm struggling with, so I'm going to engage them on Wednesday night. And, you know, my kids really benefit from the programs over here. I'm going to go take that in. And I really have this heart for justice, so I'm going to serve with International Justice Mission, or I'm going to do something with kids with Compassion International. That'll be my outlet for service. And what we're seeing is a generation that is piecing together their spirituality from different sources. And now, on the surface, that's a great thing. But if you're invested as a leader in a large mega institution that requires people to devote themselves wholly to that institution with their time, money, energy, and effort, that's a challenge. Over the last 30, 40 years, we have seen the exponential growth of the institutional church in the United States. Not the number of churches, not the impact of those churches, but the actual footprint of those churches has grown immensely as they add more and more features to attract more and more Christian consumers. At the same time, we are witnessing the significant decline in trust in large institutions. And as long as the baby boomers are around and they're fueling and funding the big institutions, they'll probably feel okay. But as that gap widens between the institutional growth and the distrust of institution and the entrepreneurial spirit of younger generation, what's happening is we're creating a megachurch bubble in the United States. Some parts of the country are already feeling this impact. Texas, probably not. The South, not nearly as much. The Northeast, the Midwest, the West, you're seeing it more and more.